and we are back. You are chatting with John P. Today we are going to be talking about the IWC Mark XII Pilot's Watch, a very interesting watch, very interesting and very high quality, especially for the movement that's on the inside, but I won't talk too much about it until we get under the gun. I think you're going to like this watch a lot, but don't forget to like and subscribe as well as do all that other good stuff because I'm here for you and you're here for me, so let's keep this going, guys, and let's do the IWC Mark XII review. So here we have the IWC Mark XII Pilot's Watch. The IWC Mark XII Pilot's Watch is a watch that came after the 11, of course, but it is a watch that marks a time in IWC history and watch history where watches were transitioning from being more utility into more luxury items. This particular watch was released in 1993, and in 1993, you really saw all of the Swiss watch manufacturers adopt certain case construction components as well as certain mentalities in watchmaking that are, for better or worse, certainly different. So I'll mention, before we jump into the first glance in the components of this watch, that this watch has become incredibly rare over the last few years. There are a few examples available on the internet, and there are many other variations of the watch that don't feature their specific movement on the inside, especially that were produced for the European market. But this watch has become rare in this 36 millimeter size. There's a 30 millimeter ladies version that nobody wants. Of course, but this 36 millimeter size has become increasingly rare for the movement on the inside, and we're going to see this become a cult classic someday, and it's already hard to get your hands on it. There's maybe 5 available at the time of the shooting on the internet that I personally saw, and we have one of them. So if you're interested or you have any questions, please reach out. I'd love to help you with it and tell you a little bit more. I'm going to keep this video very brief. I want to show you a lot of things about this watch. So, time in history where the watch industry was going transitional, moving away from utility into luxury. This particular watch has components that are very indicative of a modern luxury watch, but yet, of course, the styling cues of this watch scream military. This was a watch that IWC came out with specifically for civilian use in 1993. Prior to this, the Mark XI, it was out of production for about between 5 and 7 years before this came out. And so IWC wasn't producing this watch. They were not producing it for military use. The 11 was for military use. And so just one day, a boardroom executive probably said, hey guys, we're going to make this military watch. We got the design ready. We got everything going. Let's just start doing it. So they did it and it sold, not that many of them, but they do float around out there. So what we have is a 36 millimeter case. We've got a mixture of brushed and polished stainless steel. That's very interesting because, in a military watch, why would you really need it to be shiny? In fact, you might give away your position. I'm not a huge military buff, but I can say that, if I was wearing a military watch, I really wouldn't want the watch to be too shiny. So it's a mixture of a shiny watch as well as a brush watch, which very indicative of a luxury item, gives you a little bit of shine, but still being very refined and toned down, giving you that military watch feel. It's about 9 millimeters thick, or skinny actually. It's a thin watch. It's a thin watch comparative to, the modern day pilot's watches that IWC produces. So it's a thin watch, it's a smaller watch, it's a mid-sized watch, which is good for some. It's certainly good for some, but it definitely gives you that vintage feel while still having the components such as the sapphire crystal. It's got the date wheel. The Mark XI did not have the date wheel. It's got an automatic movement, right? So the previous watch, the Mark XI, had a manual hand wind movement. This features the automatic movement, so you can wear it every day. You don't need to worry about winding it. It's going to stay there with you, keeping time perfectly well. The rest of the case is overall really great construction. It's simple, it's classic, it serves its purpose, it's nothing more than it needs to be, and that's something that's increasingly favorable with certain watch collectors day by day. Of course, it features the IWC emblem on the back, and of course, some language there, and there we have the fish. Very it shows high resemblance of an IWC watch in today, but still having that feel of the vintage originals, which I personally love. It really has a lot of charm and character, and it really has great presence when you look at it. But on the outside, it does look very basic. While I like the look, not everybody likes the look. It's a basic watch, but it's what's on the inside that really sets it apart from being your average, everyday, basic pilot watch. What's on the inside is a JLC, a Jaeger-LeCoultre 889/2 caliber movement. Now, I know what you're thinking. Wow, a JLC movement in a base pilot's watch. Well, that's the thing, guys. In 1993, this was a watch that was in this transitional period of still producing a luxury item, but still having a lot of utility. Around 1993, a lot of manufacturers started dumping base atom movements in all of their watches, including IWC. I mean, everyone in the industry was putting atom movements, and it was okay. They were available, they were readily available, they were easy to service, easy to maintain, and manufacturers still do it to this day, and there's nothing wrong with that, especially for more entry-level pieces. And when you have a closed case back like this, there's not a huge problem, in my opinion, by using atom movements, especially for a sports watch. But this particular watch movement, the 889, this was a movement that was used in watches so much more expensive than what this watch cost. I mean, we're talking about watches that were 10 times the cost. We're talking about, let's give a few examples. So this 889 movement that's in this very watch I have in front of you was used in the JLC, the Jaeger-LeCoultre perpetual calendar. Of course, they put a module on it. This was used in Audemars Piguet chronographs, right? Audemars Piguet used this movement, albeit with a chronograph module added, for their chronographs of this day and time. Now, let's think about this. Precious metal chronographs, AP was using this. So $20,000 chronographs, roughly, in today's dollars. We're talking about a few $1,000 watch here with the same movement. Now, it's almost like a paradox, right? So let's talk about this. We have an incredibly high-end movement running this watch. Well, first, when you wind this watch, here's something that if you don't know, but maybe I'll tell you. So when you kind of wind an atom movement, 2892 or 2824, you kind of get this, you feel this hesitation. It goes shh, shh, shh. With this particular movement and other higher end movements, especially JLC calibers, it winds like butter. Now, for those of you that are kind of technical buffs and you just like that kind of thing, because they do exist, we get phone calls about it, and I personally think it's interesting as well. It's just amazing. It doesn't feel like you're winding anything. You're just turning a knob that's almost connected to nothing. And that's how smooth and how intricate this caliber is. I personally love it. But of course, the screw-down crown as well, I should mention. So it is, your sports watch. But about the sports watch, this watch is such a paradox. And it's a paradox in the fact that it features sports components, yet this JLC movement from a watch that's so basic and simple that it just did not need to have it. Let's think about this. If you were to design a sports watch, right, a pilot's watch, this would be a watch that you really could wear around and beat up, right? This was a watch that you could take to the beach. It's got the screw-down crown. Maybe you can go swimming with it. Maybe you could fly a plane with it. It is a pilot's watch after all. IWC did not need to put this movement on the inside. There's just no reason for them to need to put such a high-end JLC movement on the inside of this watch. The same movement that was being used in AP chronographs and JLC perpetual calendars and so many other high-end manufacturers' watches. Anyway, just wanted to show you guys this beautiful watch. I really do enjoy this a lot. The other thing to keep in mind is that in the current day IWC Mark lineup, or these smaller pilots watches, they are kind of considered more entry level, but this just oozes quality. When you hold this watch, it feels much more higher quality than it probably should, to be very honest with you. It's just something you kind of have to experience. Now, I'm not going to say that this is going to be a $50,000 watch someday, but I certainly can see this getting into the teens no problem, just considering the scarcity. Now, the thing to keep in mind, and I need to mention this, is that there's a few versions of this watch, this 36mm Mark XII, that you probably should avoid because they don't feature the JLC movement. Now, there are some lists floating around out on the internet there. I'll have to see if I can dig them up for you. But basically, if the dial says something on it that is not on this particular dial, then it probably does not have the JLC movement on the inside. So there was a version produced for Saab, the auto manufacturer, the now defunct auto manufacturer, and it was a Saab watch, and it was produced and given out in Europe. And there's a couple of other auto manufacturer versions of the 12 as well, and you should avoid those because those do have, I believe, just base out of movements. And so, unfortunately, someone will probably charge you the same price, and you won't get the sophisticated movement. You'll get a $50 movement, and I would not recommend that. So, final thoughts. I know at this point I'm going on and on about this watch, but I think if anything, that notion in and of itself really shows you how much that I would recommend this watch. I'd recommend this watch to somebody that likes vintage, likes pilot's watches, likes military-inspired watches, but likes all the forms and features and functions and doodads of a modern-day wearable watch. It's much like the video I did on the Rolex 16800, which was produced in about the same era as this. I did a video on the Rolex 16800. It was a transitional Submariner, and it features kind of things that were vintage and things that are modern, and this is a lot in it the same. Give this watch 5-6 years. This is going to be in the teens, no problem. Unless it's not, don't hold me to it. But there are so few of these out there, I just can't see it being any other way. So this has been the IWC Mark XII, the Mark XII. I hope that you enjoyed it, and you can check out more information about this as well as some pictures on delraywatch.com. Also, reach out to me if you have any questions about it. I've developed a little bit of a passion about this watch, and I wouldn't mind talking to you about it. Leave in the comments below anything you have to say about it. What do you think about the Mark XII? Is it going to be a future collectible? Is it going to be a watch that everyone forgets about and no one really cares? I don't know. Leave in the comments below, and I'd love to hear it. Thanks, guys. You've been chatting with John P. Ciao.